Welcome to a new episode from English Plus Podcast. Today we will focus on vocabulary that you can use in your own speaking and writing, and we will focus on describing personality and character traits. Now, we talked about that last time, and I promised you that we will talk one more time about describing personality. In this episode, we will talk about some adjectives to describe people's personality or behavior. We will talk about some adjectives to describe people's sociability, and we will wrap the episode up by talking about some other common character traits. So without further ado, let's start talking about some adjectives to describe people's personality or behavior. We will start with an example, and then we will figure out the meaning of the word or the key word that describes the personality and learn about its meaning. Let's start with this first example. She's so impetuous. I wish she would consider things before acting. So obviously the word is impetuous. 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 Now, what do you think the meaning of impetuous is? Impetuous means someone who acts on a sudden idea without thinking first, and it's often negative. You're not praising a person by saying he or she is impetuous. So that was impetuous. Let's talk about the next example. His impulsive generosity led him to give money to anyone who asked for help. And the word here is impulsive. 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 What does that mean? Now, it is similar to impetuous, but can be used in a more positive way. Impetuous and impulsive are very close to each other, but impetuous is usually used in a negative way, and impulsive is usually used in a positive way. And now for the next example. She always gives me such an effusive welcome when I visit her. The word obviously is effusive. Effusive. What does that mean? Now, when we talk about an effusive welcome, that means she gives exaggerated expression of pleasure, praise, or gratitude. Effusive welcome. So that is effusive. What about our next example? He's a very excitable child. He needs to calm down. Excitable is our word here, and that means easily excited by things. And by the way, excitable is spelled E-X-C-I-T-A-B-L-E. Excitable. And now for our next example. She's so pushy. It's typical of her to demand a pay rise for herself and not care about the rest of us. So the word is pushy. When we say that someone is pushy, what do we mean by that? P-U-S-H-Y, pushy. And that means when someone always selfishly promotes his or her own position or interests. And that is usually an informal word to use, and a negative one, of course. And now what about the next example? Freddie seemed self-conscious and uncomfortable when he had to make the announcement at the party. What does it mean to be self-conscious? Now, self-conscious is self-conscious, self-conscious. That means nervous or uncomfortable because you know what people think about you or your actions. That is self-conscious. Now, what about the next example? The teacher said Maddie was a well-balanced child who got on well at school. Seems like a good word, a positive one, and it is. Well-balanced first is spelled W-E-L-L-B-A-L-A-N-C-E-D. That is well-balanced, and that means calm and reasonable and showing good judgment. And now for our next example. He was a bit taciturn when I first met him. He hardly said a word. Now, taciturn is spelled T-A-C-I-T-U-R-N, taciturn. What does that mean? That means reserved and says very little. And we said that he hardly said a word, taciturn. And that is generally negative, of course. Now let's move on to talk about the sociability of people. Now let's talk about Chloe, for example. Chloe is such an introvert. Her brother Mark is so outgoing and is such an extrovert. Strange, isn't it? Now, here we have three words. We have introvert, we have outgoing, and we have extrovert. These three words we can use to describe people's sociability, but they are not exactly the same. When we said Chloe is such an introvert, I-N-T-R-O-V-E-R-T, that means inward looking and quiet. When we said her brother Mark is so outgoing, O-U-T, going, that means energetic and friendly and finds it easy to be with others. And we said he is such an extrovert. Extrovert is the opposite of introvert. and that means outward looking, energetic, and sociable. Now let's take a look at another example. Mr. Rogers is such a diffident man. He seems to have quite low self esteem. We have diffident and we have self esteem. Now, diffident is spelled Difffident, and self esteem is spelled SELF-ESTEEM. Self esteem. Now, when we say Mr. Rogers is such a diffident man, what does that mean? That means he lacks confidence. He is not confident enough. And when we say that he has low self esteem, we mean that he has a low opinion of himself. Now let's move on to talk about the next example. English people are traditionally thought of as rather reserved. RESERVED, reserved. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that they're not sociable, but that means they're not immediately sociable. Some people say it's true, some people say it's not, but that is at least what they are traditionally thought of. And now for the next example. Eva tends to be rather aloof. I don't know if she's just shy. Now, aloof is close, but it's a little bit different, and it's mostly negative when we talk about a person who's unfriendly and not sociable. And it is spelled, by the way, ALOOF, aloof. And now for the next example. My Aunt Annie can be very haughty and disdainful at times, but she's lovely, really. Now, here, haughty and disdainful. Haughty is HAUGHTY. Disdainful is DISDANFUL. What is the meaning of haughty? Now, we said my Aunt Annie can be very haughty and disdainful, but if you really know her, you will realize that she is a lovely person. So that means haughty and disdainful are not that positive, right? So haughty is unfriendly and thinks herself better than others. Now, of course, herself here, because we're talking about Aunt Annie, could be herself or himself. And disdainful, we're talking about a person who does not believe others deserve respect. These are very negative traits to have, but some people do have them. Anyway, let's move on to talk about the next example. I've always found Professor Macroft very unapproachable, but his colleague, Dr. Simpson, is very approachable. Now, here, obviously, the words are approachable and unapproachable. Now, approachable is spelled APPROACHABLE. Approachable is obviously the opposite. So, what do we mean by saying unapproachable? Unapproachable means not easy to be sociable with or start a conversation with. Sometimes even intimidating. You're kind of afraid of this person. But it doesn't have to be intimidating, but unapproachable, difficult to be sociable or start a conversation with. And obviously, approachable is just the opposite. Easy to be sociable with or start a conversation with. And now let's move on to the next example. Natasha is very conceited and self-important, but Rachel is such a modest person. So, conceited, self-important, again, we're talking about negative qualities. Modest, we're talking about a positive quality. Conceited is spelled CONCEITED. Self-important is obviously SELF-IMPORTANT. And modest is spelled MODEST. Now, let's start with conceited. When we said Natasha is very conceited, she thinks herself wonderful. These are the people who look in the mirror for hours and hours and they just praise themselves. Mirror, mirror on the wall, something like that. And then we talked about self-important. That means to have an exaggerated sense of her importance. It is important to be confident, but not that much. This is not about confidence. When you have an exaggerated sense of your importance, that means you're self-important and you think you're better than other people. You might be better, but if you think so, there's a problem. And trust me, there's always someone better. No matter how good you are, there's always someone better, and it doesn't matter who's better than whom. It all matters that we're doing the things we want to do. We're confident we can deliver. We can get to the things we want to get. And that's enough. We don't need to be self-important, conceited, haughty, or all of these things. But some people are. And here we go to the opposite, which is modest. We said Rachel is such a modest person. Now, a modest person prefers not to exaggerate her or his own qualities. And now for the next example. Joe is always so polite and respectful. Respectful, RESPECTFUL, respectful. I wish he would be more informal and just treat me as his equal. too respectful. Now, of course, respectful is a positive word all the time, polite and respectful. But here the person is just saying, oh, come on, don't be so formal. Don't respect me that much. We're friends. But coming back to the word itself, respectful, it means treating someone well and politely, often with admiration. And that's a very positive word, of course. And now, before I move on to talk about the last couple of examples we have, let me remind you that there is a link in the description of the episode that will take you to our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com. There you will find interactive exercises and you will find a PDF practice worksheet you can download. And all of these interactive activities, PDF downloadable worksheet you can get for free. And they are designed only for you to practice the things we're learning here. The post is custom made for this episode, and everything in the post is meant to help you practice the things you learn and improve your English. So please take your English to the next level and take this link in the description. Go to our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com, and improve your English every day. And there's something else. There's also another link in the description that will take you to our Patreon page. If you like the content we're creating and you would like to support us, go to Patreon, go to our page on Patreon, of course, and become a patron of English Plus Podcast. Help us reach more people and help us create more of the episodes you like. Now, that being said, let's move on to talk about the last couple of examples we have for today. And we have an example about Aryan. Aryan is a somewhat naive person. He thinks love can solve all the world's problems. Now, as beautiful as the idea is, unfortunately, we know it's not true, or it's not always true. Now, some people believe love can solve all the world's problems, but not everybody believes that in the world. I wish everybody would believe in that, but that's not the truth. So here, that's why we said Aryan is a somewhat naive person. Naive. What does that mean? Naive means willing to believe simple things, perhaps because of inexperience. And remember, a naive person is never a stupid person. We're not saying a stupid person. It's more leaning on the innocent part of the person. This person is more innocent than stupid, but never stupid. And now for the next word, which is close to naive, but in a different way. Telephone salespeople often take advantage of gullible people. Gullible, Gullible, gullible people. Now, these people are easily deceived people because these people tend to trust other people easily, so they're easily tricked. And unfortunately, bad people take advantage of gullible people. And again, gullible people are not stupid. Even sometimes people call them stupid, but they are not. They're also innocent people. They might be naive, innocent, but they're not stupid. They trust easily and they trust too much. And unfortunately, that's a problem in our times. Anyway, let's move on to the next example. My father was a very conscientious man. He never took time off work unless he was really sick. Now, when you are conscientious, and it is spelled, by the way, Conscientious, conscientious. In this example, when this person talks about his father, that means always took his work very seriously and paid attention to the smallest of details in this work. That is to be conscientious. And now for the next example. She's a restless individual. I don't think she'll ever settle down in a job. When you talk about a person as restless, 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 that means not satisfied with what you're doing now and you want something new. But the problem about this is that is the case all the time. You always want something new. Sometimes it's good, by the way. To be restless at certain stages of your life may help you find what you really want to do. You don't settle down. You don't settle down before you really figure out what you want to do in life. Well, but that is a little bit of philosophy. We don't want to go there. Anyway, let's move now to our very last example for today. And that is, you are so obstinate and pig-headed. Why don't you listen when people give you advice? Now, obstinate and pig-headed are like stubborn, but even more. Obstinate is Obstinate. Pig-headed is Pig-headed. Pig-headed. Now, obstinate and pig-headed are the same. Both mean unwilling to change despite persuasion, and even though sometimes you are on the wrong and you know it, but you are just too obstinate to change your mind. Pig-headed is, as we said, just like obstinate, but it's stronger, and it's more informal. But that's about it. Obstinate, pig-headed, all the other words we talked about today, I hope you found them useful, and I hope you can use them in your own conversations and writing. And now that we've come to the end of our episode for today, I would like to thank you very much for listening to another episode from English Plus Podcast. This is your host, Danny. I will see you next time.